In the stillness of night, when the world slows its breath and the mind begins to soften, there exists a quiet doorway between thought and silence. It is in this sacred hour that one may align with the unseen flow of abundance, not through force, not through struggle, but through inner harmony and awakened intention. There is an ancient practice whispered across generations, a simple nightly reflection that has long been associated with attracting fortune, stability, and unexpected opportunities. It does not demand gold, nor does it require complex ritual. It asks only for sincerity, discipline, and a heart unburdened by doubt. Before sleep, one should sit in calm awareness. The body rests, but the mind remains gently awake. In this moment, the breath becomes the bridge between the visible and the invisible. Slowly, deeply, one begins to release the weight of the day's worries of money, fear of lack, and the endless chasing of outcomes. For wealth does not enter a mind that is tight with fear, it flows toward a mind that is open like the sky. Then, with quiet repetition, a simple inner affirmation is held. May abundance find its way to me. May opportunities recognize me. May my actions be guided toward prosperity and wisdom. This is not a demand upon life, but an alignment with it. Just as rivers naturally find the ocean, so too does fortune find the one who is prepared inwardly to receive it. The words are less important than the state of being behind them. If spoken with tension, they become empty. If spoken with calm certainty, they become a seed planted in the deepest soil of the mind. As sleep approaches, visualization gently follows. One imagines a life not of greed but of balance. Needs are met. Efforts bear fruit. Doors open at the right time. Money flows not as a storm but as a steady, nourishing stream. In this vision, one does not chase wealth, one becomes a person through whom wealth moves naturally and responsibly. The true essence of this nightly practice lies in surrender. To release the illusion of scarcity is to step into a broader reality. Many suffer not because they lack resources, but because they are trapped in the belief of lack. When this belief dissolves, perception shifts. And when perception shifts, life begins to respond differently. As the body sinks into rest, gratitude becomes the final offering. Gratitude for what has been received, gratitude for what is on its way, and gratitude even for the unseen processes already unfolding. This gratitude is not dependent on external success, it is the foundation upon which success quietly grows. Night after night, this inner discipline reshapes the mind. It does not promise instant riches, nor does it force destiny. Instead, it aligns thought, emotion, and intention with the natural rhythm of growth and opportunity. Over time, the practitioner begins to notice subtle changes, timely ideas, unexpected chances, wiser decisions, and a calmer relationship with money itself. In this way, wealth becomes less of a chase and more of a consequence. Not something hunted in desperation, but something attracted through clarity, patience, and inner stillness. When sleep finally arrives, it is no longer ordinary sleep. It becomes a continuation of the intention set in waking silence. The mind rests, but the seed remains active beneath the surface, quietly shaping tomorrow. And so each night becomes a gentle ceremony, not of superstition, but of alignment. A reminder that true fortune begins not in the outside world, but in the quiet space within, where thought becomes intention, intention becomes direction, and direction slowly becomes destiny. Nighttime calm is a powerful moment. The night is described as a sacred, quiet time when the mind is most open to inner transformation and alignment with abundance. In the quiet hours of night, when the noise of the world fades and the heart is no longer pulled in many directions, the human mind becomes more receptive to its deeper currents. It is in this softened state that inner transformation begins, not through effort or struggle, but through still awareness. When the body rests, the thoughts that remain are the most powerful because they sink deeper into the foundation of consciousness. At this time, one does not need to chase wealth in the outside world. Instead, one turns inward and observes the condition of the mind that seeks wealth. Is it restless, anxious, or burdened by the fear of tomorrow? Or is it steady, calm, and quietly confident in the unfolding of life? The difference between these two states determines much of what a person experiences in the days ahead. When the mind is filled with tension about money, it becomes like a closed hand. Even if opportunities come close, they cannot be received fully. But when the mind is relaxed and open, like a palm facing the sky, life naturally places things within it. This is not magic, but the simple law of inner alignment. What is held within is reflected without. As the night deepens, one may sit or lie in silence and begin to observe the breath. Each inhale brings life, each exhale releases burden. With every breath, a small letting go occurs of worry, of comparison, of limitation. In this gentle rhythm, the idea of lack begins to lose its grip. It is replaced by a quiet understanding that life is not fixed or closed, but always moving, always responding. In this state, the mind is guided to remember moments of provision, even small ones. Times when needs were met unexpectedly, when help arrived at the right moment, when things worked out despite doubt. These memories are not casual reflections, they are reminders that life has already shown generosity before. By remembering them, the mind learns to trust again. From this trust arises a subtle inner confidence. Not the loud confidence of ambition, but a silent knowing that one is not separate from opportunity. This confidence does not demand wealth, it prepares the inner ground where wealth can arrive without resistance. Just as soil does not chase seeds, yet allows them to grow when conditions are right, the prepared mind simply remains receptive. As sleep draws closer, thoughts are softened further. The future is not chased or controlled, it is gently released. One may quietly hold the feeling that tomorrow is already unfolding in harmony. The need to force outcomes begins to dissolve. In its place grows a patient expectation, like waiting for dawn without anxiety, knowing the sun will rise in its own time. In this inner stillness, even desire changes form. It is no longer a desperate craving, but a clear intention guided by balance. One does not seek wealth to escape life, but to support life, to live with stability, to offer help, to grow in responsibility. This clarity refines the energy of intention, making it steady rather than scattered. When the body finally rests, the mind carries this gentle imprint into sleep. It is not a heavy thought, but a quiet direction. And though sleep appears silent, it becomes a continuation of this inner setting, where the seeds of thought rest in deeper soil, slowly shaping perception, behavior, and awareness for the days ahead. In this way, the night becomes not an ending, but a preparation. A soft training of the inner world where abundance is not chased, but quietly welcomed through clarity, calmness, and inner order. Release of fear and scarcity mindset. Letting go of worries about money and lack is essential because fear blocks the natural flow of opportunities and prosperity. As the practice continues into deeper reflection, the mind begins to understand a subtle truth that is often overlooked in the rush of daily life. Wealth is not only a matter of external effort, but also a reflection of inner state. The way a person thinks, feels, and silently believes about life shapes the opportunities they notice and the decisions they make. In the quiet of night, when distractions are reduced, this inner shaping becomes more visible and more powerful. At this stage, one begins to observe how often the mind is pulled toward worry even when there is no immediate danger. It creates imagined shortages, future fears, and unnecessary pressure. These thoughts feel real, yet they are only mental patterns repeating themselves. When one becomes aware of this, a gentle separation begins to form between the observer and the thought. The person is no longer fully inside the worry. Instead, they begin to watch it pass like clouds moving across a wide sky. This awareness is the beginning of inner freedom. It does not require struggle against thoughts, but simply recognition of them. And in this recognition, their power weakens. As the night grows deeper and silence becomes more natural, the mind starts to rest in a space that is not controlled by fear or desire. It becomes more open, more balanced, and more clear. In this clarity, a different relationship with money begins to form. Instead of seeing it as something distant and difficult to obtain, it is understood as a flow that responds to attention, effort, and mindset. The person no longer feels separated from prosperity, but begins to see themselves as part of a larger movement of exchange and growth. This shift is subtle, yet it changes how actions are taken in daily life. As one prepares for sleep, the focus turns towards simplicity. There is no need to force complex visualizations or intense concentration. Instead, a soft awareness is maintained that life continues to support growth in unseen ways. Even challenges are reinterpreted not as punishment, but as lessons that refine judgment, patience, and strength. This understanding reduces resistance, and where resistance fades, flow becomes easier. The body, now relaxed, mirrors the mind's condition. Breathing becomes slower, more natural, and less controlled. With each breath, the nervous system settles further into calm. In this state, thoughts lose their sharp edges. Even concerns about money begin to feel distant, less urgent, and less dominant. This is important because what dominates the mind before sleep often influences the tone of the subconscious. In this peaceful state, intention becomes more refined. It is no longer driven by impatience or fear, but by quiet direction. One may simply hold a feeling of stability, of enoughness, of gradual and steady improvement. This feeling is more important than specific words or images because feeling carries deeper influence than thought alone. The subconscious responds more strongly to emotional tone than to logical instruction. As sleep approaches, the sense of control is released. There is no attempt to manage outcomes during the night. Instead, there is trust that the inner alignment created during these moments will continue working silently. Just as soil does not force a plant to grow but allows it through right conditions, the mind does not force outcomes but allows them through inner readiness. Eventually, awareness begins to fade into sleep, but something subtle remains active beneath the surface. It is not a conscious thought, but a direction set inwardly. This direction influences perception in the coming days, shaping how opportunities are seen, how decisions are made, and how challenges are interpreted. In this way, the night practice becomes a quiet form of inner training. Not dramatic, not immediate, but steady and cumulative. Over time, it strengthens patience, reduces fear, and builds a more balanced relationship with wealth and life itself. Use of positive affirmation before sleep. Simple. Sincere affirmations about abundance and opportunity help plant a strong mental seed for attracting positive outcomes. As this inner practice deepens over time, a quieter form of understanding begins to settle within the mind. It becomes clear that the outer world is not separate from the inner world, but rather an extension of it. The experiences a person meets in daily life are often shaped by the subtle patterns formed within their thoughts, emotions, and expectations. When the night is used as a space for reflection and alignment, those inner patterns slowly begin to change. In this stage, the mind starts to notice how reactive it has been throughout the day. Small events may have triggered worry, impatience, or frustration, especially around matters of money and security. Yet in the stillness of night, these reactions are seen more clearly, almost as passing movements rather than fixed truths. This recognition brings a sense of relief, because what is observed with awareness begins to lose its control over the individual. With continued practice, there is less identification with fear-based thinking. The mind no longer fully believes every anxious prediction it creates. Instead, there is a growing space between thought and awareness. In this space, clarity begins to emerge. Decisions feel less pressured and the sense of urgency around survival slowly softens. This does not mean responsibility is avoided, but rather that actions are no longer driven by panic. As the body rests and the environment grows silent, a deeper trust in life begins to form. It is not a blind belief, but a quiet confidence built from observation. One begins to see that life has continuously supported existence even in difficult moments. Problems have come and gone, yet life itself has remained steady. This realization brings stability to the heart, reducing the emotional weight carried into sleep. At this point, the idea of wealth also begins to transform. It is no longer seen only as accumulation or possession, but as flow, balance, and timing. Sometimes wealth appears as opportunity, sometimes as insight, sometimes as the ability to make wiser choices. This broader understanding reduces desperation and replaces it with patience. The mind starts to accept that timing plays a role in all forms of growth. As sleep approaches, inner dialogue becomes softer. Instead of repeating worries or demands, the mind leans toward acceptance. There is a gentle acknowledgement that effort has been made, lessons have been learned, and tomorrow will bring its own path. This acceptance does not weaken ambition, instead it purifies it. Ambition that is free from fear becomes more stable and effective. The breath continues its natural rhythm, and with each cycle the nervous system relaxes further. In this relaxed state, mental boundaries loosen. The sense of separation between self and life becomes less rigid. There is a quiet feeling of being carried by something larger, something orderly and intelligent in its own way. This feeling cannot be forced, it arises naturally when resistance decreases. In this inward silence, intention is no longer loud or repetitive. It becomes a subtle direction held in the background of awareness. A simple wish for stability, growth, and balance is enough. The mind does not cling to how or when results will appear. Instead, it rests in the understanding that actions taken in clarity tend to bear more meaningful outcomes over time. Eventually, awareness begins to dissolve into sleep, but the quality of that sleep is shaped by the state in which it began. A calm mind leads to deeper rest, and deeper rest supports clearer waking hours. This cycle gradually strengthens itself. Over days and nights, patterns of thought begin to shift, and with them, perception and behavior also change. In this way, the practice becomes less about a single ritual and more about a gradual reformation of inner life. Not through force, but through consistent return to stillness. Not through control, but through understanding. And slowly, what once felt distant and uncertain begins to feel more natural, more accessible, and more aligned with a balanced way of living. Visualization of balanced prosperity, imagining a stable, peaceful life with enough resources, encourages a healthy, non-greedy relationship with wealth. As the practice continues to unfold over time, the mind begins to enter a more refined stage of inner stability, where even subtle fluctuations of thought are noticed with greater ease. What once felt overwhelming or urgent now appears softer, almost distant, as if the mind is learning to observe life rather than be consumed by it. In this quiet maturity, the relationship with wealth, effort, and uncertainty begins to transform in a deeper and more lasting way. During the night, when silence becomes complete, awareness naturally turns inward without force. In this inward turning, one begins to recognize how much energy is usually spent on anticipation, thinking ahead, fearing loss, or imagining outcomes that have not yet arrived. These mental projections, when seen clearly, begin to lose their authority. They are no longer treated as instructions for survival, but as passing movements within the mind's field of activity. With this recognition, a subtle spaciousness emerges. Within that space, thoughts still arise, but they no longer dominate the entire experience. This creates a quiet balance where responsibility and relaxation coexist. A person can still intend to improve their life, still take action in the world, yet internally they are no longer constantly tightened by urgency. This shift is profound because it changes the emotional foundation from which all decisions are made. As the body rests and breathing slows, the nervous system begins to reflect this inner shift. There is less tension held in the background even if the person is not consciously trying to relax. The mind and body gradually synchronize into a calmer rhythm. In this rhythm, the idea of scarcity begins to feel less convincing. It is not that challenges disappear, but rather that they no longer define the entire perception of life. In this state, thoughts about prosperity begin to take on a different tone. Instead of being filled with longing or resistance, they become more observational. One may acknowledge the desire for stability, comfort, and growth, but without emotional agitation. This calm acknowledgement allows intention to become clearer and more grounded. It is like smoothing the surface of water so that reflection becomes more accurate. As sleep approaches, there is often a moment where mental activity slows significantly and a natural stillness takes over. In this stillness, the mind is no longer actively constructing stories about the future. Instead, there is a quiet openness, a readiness to receive rest and renewal. Within this openness, the seeds of thought planted earlier in the night settle more deeply, not as commands but as gentle impressions. Over time, this repeated return to calm awareness begins to influence daily behavior in subtle ways. Choices become less impulsive and more considered. Reactions become less intense and more measured. Even financial decisions, whether small or significant, begin to carry a sense of patience and clarity that was not present before. This is not the result of sudden change, but of gradual refinement. There is also a growing understanding that stability is not only created through accumulation, but through balance. Excess anxiety about gaining wealth can be just as destabilizing as lack itself. When the mind learns to rest in equilibrium, it becomes easier to engage with life without extremes of hope and fear. This balance creates a steady foundation from which effort becomes more effective and sustainable. As sleep finally arrives, awareness gently fades, but something subtle continues beneath the surface. It is not thought nor intention, but a residual tone of calmness that carries into rest. This tone influences the quality of recovery, allowing the mind to reset more deeply. With time, this deeper rest supports greater clarity during waking hours. In this way, the night becomes a quiet teacher, not through words or commands, but through repeated experience of stillness. And through this stillness, the mind gradually learns that clarity, patience, and inner balance are not separate from prosperity, but part of its very foundation. Gratitude and inner alignment create lasting change. Practicing gratitude and maintaining inner calm gradually reshapes mindset, leading to better decisions, opportunities, and financial growth over time. As the inner practice matures further, a deeper layer of awareness begins to reveal itself, where the distinction between effort and surrender becomes more refined. The mind starts to understand that true stability is not created by constant mental pressure, but by consistent inner alignment. In the quiet hours before sleep, this understanding is not intellectual alone, but experiential, felt through the gradual softening of thought and emotion. At this stage, the individual no longer engages with the idea of wealth as something distant or uncertain in the same way as before. Instead, there is a growing recognition that life operates through patterns, and those patterns respond to inner condition. When the mind is restless, perception becomes fragmented. When the mind is steady, perception becomes clearer, and with clarity, action becomes more effective. This simple but profound shift changes the entire approach to both money and life. In the stillness of night, awareness naturally detaches from the urgency of external goals. What remains is a more essential sense of being present. Within this presence, thoughts about future security may still arise, but they no longer carry the same emotional weight. They are observed rather than obeyed. This shift from identification to observation is one of the most important transformations in inner development, because it reduces the unconscious tension that often drives imbalance. As the body relaxes further, even the subtle effort of trying to think positively begins to dissolve. There is no longer a need to force affirmations or hold rigid visualizations. Instead, a softer form of intention remains, one that is closer to feeling than thinking. It is a quiet sense of openness toward life unfolding in a stable and supportive way. This feeling is not manufactured, it emerges naturally when resistance decreases. Over time, this openness begins to influence how the mind interprets daily events. Challenges that once appeared as threats are now seen more as temporary conditions. Opportunities that were previously overlooked become more visible because attention is less clouded by fear. In this way, inner calm directly affects outer perception. What the mind is tuned to recognize begins to change. As sleep approaches, there is often a phase where thoughts slow into longer gaps of silence. In these gaps, the mind is not actively constructing meaning. Instead, it rests in a neutral awareness that feels neither tense nor excited. This neutral state is important because it allows mental impressions from the night practice to settle without distortion. Like dust settling in still water, clarity forms when movement ceases. In this quiet state, the concept of wealth itself becomes more integrated with life rather than separated from it. It is no longer seen as a final destination, but as a continuous flow influenced by decisions, awareness, and timing. This understanding removes the psychological burden of arriving somewhere and replaces it with the more sustainable approach of steady participation in life's unfolding process. Gradually, even sleep becomes part of this inner discipline, not through control but through preparation. The quality of rest reflects the quality of the mind that enters it. When the mind is less burdened by fear and expectation, sleep becomes deeper and more restorative. This deeper rest supports clearer thinking and more balanced emotional responses the following day. With repetition over days and nights, these subtle shifts accumulate. The change is not dramatic from one moment to the next, but cumulative, like water slowly shaping stone. The individual begins to notice more patience in decision-making, less emotional reaction to uncertainty, and a quieter confidence in handling financial and personal matters. Ultimately, the essence of this practice is not about attracting wealth through force of thought, but about creating an inner environment where clarity, stability, and awareness can naturally support better outcomes. In this way, the night becomes not just a time of rest, but a space of quiet transformation where the foundation of outer life is gently shaped from within.